Are you ready? Okay. Welcome to the common house basement, where it's very dark right now because we are renovating it to add another room here in an area that used to be a garage. And part of that is installing another bathroom so that this unit here can have its own bathroom with shower, toilet, sink, and all that stuff. So one of the problems we're having is that in order to install a bathroom, you need to drain your wastewater, and our septic entrance is right about this height. So water doesn't flow uphill, so all the water that goes down from the shower has to find a way up somehow into our septic inlet. So we were looking online for a solution, and we found that there's like these little units that can pump sewage basically uphill. And that's how we found this unit, which is called a Saniflo.
Not sponsored by them, by the way.
Not sponsored by them, but the reason I wanted to do a quick video on this is because usually when you're doing this, you end up with a raised floor because you still need to have like a P-trap for your shower, and that usually requires a lot of depth, and you don't usually have that. But we have a very interesting solution here for that problem. But another reason I want to make this video is because I just found it hard to find information online on how to install this thing, and we could probably show some things that are going to be helpful. All right, so this is the Saniflo unit that we got. I think it's called the Saniflo Pack. It is a unit that can accept a toilet, a sink, and a shower. So it has a 4-inch port on the left here on the top, a 1.5 inch inlet here, and another 1.5 inch over here. Now they do give you these rubber couplings that you can go from 1.5 inch to 2, which I prefer because the shower drain would be nice to have that 2-inch. So that's what I've done here. I think some of these rubbers you need to cut open on one side, and then everything kind of clamps together with these hose clamps, and that way just everything sticks on here. This is the discharge drain, which could be 1 inch or 3/4. And I've chosen 1 inch because that's a bigger diameter. And I think you also have to cut that, which is a little unintuitive, I guess. But, you know, it's a way for them to make one fitting that can be multiple sizes. So you just cut it off where you want it to be, and then stick a 1-inch pipe in there and clamp it down. Then I saw somewhere in a photo that they're putting a shutoff at on that 1-inch line. So I'm putting this 1-inch ball valve right here in case you ever need to come in here and shut it off. That way you can. This is the vent. So this unit is vented and needs to be vented to the outside. So I got an 1.5 inch pipe that's going to go up and connect to my roof vent from here. So this is going to live underneath the vanity. And the vanity is going to come out to about here. It's going to be 40 inches wide. And we're going to pour concrete here to match this level floor. And this area will always be sunken in so that this unit can sit here. And what I did here to prepare it, if this thing ever overflows, which I hope it doesn't, I also have this little alarm that if the water level ever gets too high, it will start to beep. I'm going to use some of this foam underneath here to maybe reduce sound or vibration. You can also screw it down. There's 2 screw holes on each side, so that way it stays nice and secure. But I'm gonna keep it off the wall 1.5 inches here. So I put a block in here. I've closed this hole up with a little plug they give you, and it also has a flap on the inside that water cannot go out, I believe. It can only come in. So that's another safety protection. The reason I'm putting 1.5 inch here is that if we ever need to take these pipes off, which are just put on by rubber, we have 1.5 inches to slide it to the right, and it allows us to get these pipes off, because these will be, once they're glued, they're going to be fixed where they are. This port is going to receive this Y fitting first, 2-inch going to 1.5 inches. This will be our sink. So I need to find a way to somehow drop our sink into this unit So not having access to that port, I'm gonna all put it into this side. So this is gonna go on here first, staying just within the, you know, edge of the vanity here. And that allows us to drop a sink in from up here. Then it's gonna take a slight turn. Got this Y here. It's gonna go to a 2-inch line, and that goes all the way to the shower. And here I got my P-trap for the shower. And as you can see, that just sits below the concrete line. It is actually more like 7 inches over there instead of 6 over here. So that will just fit. And then since this is also high up, it will give me enough slope to go from like just underneath the surface of the concrete all the way to the bottom of this unit here. Then the reason why this is a Y is because I want to also vent this shower. So I'm going to send a 1.5-inch line uphill to that corner that goes up and then over to my vent as well. Then we got this toilet, and you know, a regular toilet that sits on the ground wouldn't really work because you would have something like this, like a 90 instead of a 45 coming down, and you can kind of tell that, you know, you're not going to have enough space. Plus by the time you're like at the bottom here, you have to get uphill to somehow get into this unit, and the water doesn't necessarily want to flow uphill, so that's not going to work. So what's great about these toilets that are in the wall, this will be a wall hung toilet. They have the outlet sits right here, and you can actually come out of those at a 45-degree angle according to the manual. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. I'm going to come out at 45. I'm going to use this coupling to connect to my white PVC pipes. And then I'm going to cut a little bit out of this wall here in order to fit this pipe in here. But it basically is going to come down. I put a clean out on here so I can clean this out immediately if something ever gets clogged. And it's going to make a 45 turn here, and then it's going to connect into this. So it's a gentle curve. Instead of using 290s, I'm using 245s to get into this wall. That way we have the least amount of turns, the least amount of resistance for it to get into this unit. And then once everything gets into this unit, it gets grinded, and then it exits here through a 1-inch pipe. And I'm gonna put this ball valve. I saw this in a photo somewhere on the internet. Someone put a ball valve here so that you can always shut off the drain if you need to. And then that goes straight up. The manual tells you to go straight up. You don't want to really go at too much of an angle. I'm gonna have to angle it a little bit because if I do, I actually have to use less 90-degree corners to get to my drain. So I'm also using, instead of 90-degree corners, they tell you it's best to use 245s like this. So that's what I'm going to use to get up into the wall. I'm going to slightly angle it up, and then at the top, I'm going to go that way with it. And from there on out, it's going to be downhill all the way to the back there, where you can see there's a little pipe. That's where it's got to go. But from up here to down there is all going to be downhill. So this is good. They have all kinds of, you know, how much can you, how much distance can you go up, you know, and then how long can you go far? And we're well below these, you know, 12 feet. I mean, this ceiling is probably more like 9, so even at 12 feet, you could still push it out 120 feet. And this is only 16, so that's easily gonna work. So yeah, that's it doesn't look like you have to vent the toilet, but the rest of the fixtures need to be vented. So I'm gonna make sure that everything is vented properly. So the sinks and the shower. And I say sinks because there's going to be a sink on each side of the wall here and one on the other side of the wall. It's more like a utility sink. So once I come up like this, I'm probably going to split it off like that so that there's 2 sinks that can be connected in here. And then again, we'll have a vent here at the top. So that's my plan. It's a bit of a mess and a bit scary to hook this all up, but I think it should work. And eventually another thing we'll need here is a GFCI outlet that this can get plugged into. And it would be nice to also put a shut-off switch right here so that in the event of something going wrong, you can always shut the power off. You can always shut the discharge line off. It will have an alarm. This is an alarm unit if the water level gets too high, so it'll start beeping at you. And if it actually overflows, it will be in this indented concrete area that I'm gonna line with red guard so that if water ever gets here, it's not gonna just soak into the concrete or soak between the cracks here. So that way it makes it easy to clean. And then if I ever need to get it out, I can always unscrew down there at the back, undo these hose clamps, take this, well, there will be an 1.5 inch of space here. I can take the whole unit, slide it to the right, disconnect these pipes, and I could replace the entire unit if I wanted to. So that's always an option. So yeah, it's a bit of a big puzzle, but I think it will all work out. One of the cool things about it being a garage, so the garage is usually always lower, like 6 inches or 5 inches lower than the rest of the slab, so that if there's ever gasoline that spills out of a car or whatever, it's always gonna be lower than the house. It can never drain in there. What they had here is a lower floor, which I'm standing in right now. Now, the previous owners actually renovated this garage already by putting another bedroom in this section of the garage. So there used to be a wall here, and they just poured cement here, which I guess is great, and they installed the floor for us already. But the only thing they didn't do is put radiant tubing in here, which kind of sucks because it's really hard to heat this room. So we won't have radiant heat in this floor, which does, like the rest of the house does have radiant heat. But the benefit of this setup is that we looked at this and we're like, well, what if we put our bathroom over here? What we're gonna have is we're gonna have a benefit of this floor being lower. And it's about 6 inches actually. And for this upflush unit, it requires you to put your shower actually 6 inches higher than the unit, because just the way that the drain has to enter the unit. So for those who don't know, this is basically a giant grinder, and it pumps whatever it grinds up vertically, and then you can go out to wherever your septic is.
And what's nice about it, from what I understand, is it's not just for your toilet. You could drain all your sink and your shower into it.
So they have a couple of different units that they make, and you can see it here. Sandy Pack, the Grind Pro. The Saniflo is basically
I know this
a giant
is not
blender.
The most glamorous
It's
thing.
like a chocolate bar grinder. So we got the Sandy Pack because from doing all the measurements and figuring out, like, it had the perfect, like the outlets were just all on the perfect location. So by putting it here, we had our toilet input right here, and then an input for shower or sinks. There's another input on this side, but unfortunately we cannot use that because this concrete is here. I mean, we could chip it out, but why do that if I could just drain it all into one entrance? The vent is over here, which is in a great location for the air to come in. The pump is right here. And then, so everything was kind of perfectly located for that. Oh, and then the outlet, the electric is right here to the right. So
yeah, and what's
perfect.
also nice about this situation is that the other side is actually the utility room. So you'd be able to
that's
access.
true. So part of what I'm discovering as I'm learning how to renovate, and first of all, I'm not an expert plumber. I just put this together based on the best of my knowledge, and I'm going to confirm it with my plumber, who is Aaron, and he's been really great at helping me get started on this. But one of the parts that I discovered about renovation that I find so illogical is that we do all our plumbing and our water lines, and then we bury it in the wall. And whenever we want to check on it or we want to renovate it, we have to just tear everything apart. So part of what I want to try to figure out is to be able to maintain access to it as much as possible. So that's why this was another great location for this bathroom, because it shares this wall with the utility room, which from the other side will be unfinished, and you'll have access to, most of the plumbing from there. And you'll also have access to this because we're gonna put the vanity right here. So the vanity runs till about right here. So right here is where the cabinet comes up.
So this is essentially going to be buried in the vanity. Like, where's
So
the floor going to come up?
Floor level is gonna be right here where I'm standing.
Yeah, so we have to basically build something around this, right?
Hold on, yeah, so
Okay.
there's gonna be, so we're basically gonna, I'm gonna figure out how far the cabinet comes out, and usually cabinets off the floor another 4 inches. So we still actually maintain a lot of our space underneath the cabinet. I did put the sink input over to the left, usually it comes out from here, but this way the trap arm can actually come in and go directly to the left. You could take that apart, you can use the clean out to clean out a clog if that ever happens. And if you remove that, you could technically take this unit out if there's ever a problem with it, or service it by taking off the lid. And yeah, another thing I did is I added a layer of red guard here on the concrete. If this thing ever overflows or spills water, this is gonna make it waterproof. So that way it's either easy to clean out or it can evaporate. But this way it won't ever damage our concrete, because concrete water will soak into. And if you have a bunch of dirty water coming out of this and it's soaking into the concrete, that's gonna be really hard to remove. So that's what I wanted to do. I added some foam. This came with the packaging, and I thought, well, this unit, it's got a grinder in it, so it might shake or it might, make some noise, and it might scratch on this. So that's why I thought, why not put a piece of foam in there just to protect it? And then I'm gonna probably put another 2x4 here to just really keep it in place. But then the rest will just be poured concrete. We're gonna put radiant tubing in it so that at least the bathroom and the sleeping area next to it will have radiant heat flooring. But in order to protect the pipes from the concrete, another thing I'm gonna do is basically build like a little box and continue the waterproofing inside that box. So imagine having a couple blocks, essentially just build like a little tunnel for this pipe to ride into, because if we were to just pour concrete right around this pipe, you might have an unfortunate event in the future where it cracks and you can never get to it. You'd have to, take out the concrete. So I'm basically gonna create a tunnel for this drain pipe and then line it with red guard so that if there's a leak, water can either evaporate or we can somehow get it out of there. The only thing that we had to do is take 2 inches out of this slab in order to fit the trap here for the shower. So right here you can see we just cut out a little gap right there, 2 inches deep. So the slab is about 4 usually. And that way we have the perfect slope for our drain pipe here to go into the unit. And then what you have here is a vent that goes up and goes around for air to be able to follow that water so it doesn't suck the water out of the P-trap as it's trying to get air from over here. So there's a nice slope on that, not too steep, not too shallow. It's about 1/4 inch per foot. And all of that's possible because we're 6 inches lower than the actual floor here.
Yeah, it really worked out because even in my place in Brooklyn, the bathroom is elevated. Like you have to walk up because you
pretty much have the same setup because you need your plumbing underneath that. So in this picture, you can kind of see how it works. Here they're saying, here's your unit, your toilet can come in, and then your shower should be a minimum of 6 inches up, which we actually have now because that concrete's out. And you know, another thing that makes this possible is usually a normal toilet will have a drain on the bottom, which would be very tricky here because let me grab a 3-inch fitting. It's not exactly the right fitting, but imagine 6 inches down and you'd have a 90-degree coming out from the bottom, and then you'd have to somehow get into this unit like 8 inches high or whatever.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't work. And usually with the toilet too, you want to make sure you have kind of a long sweep instead of a short, tight corner because it just helps the water flow better. Now, that's why we went with like a unit that hangs on the wall, like a toilet that hangs on the wall. Because
some Americans will not have ever heard of this.
Yeah, this is actually
a very European thing.
This is actually very common in Europe to see this. This is a toilet that hangs on the wall versus sits on the ground. And what's great about that is that the inlet is right here now, and that's significantly higher than this inlet here. So, and according to the manual, you can either go straight down with your drain, or you can be at a 45-degree angle. So by doing a 45-degree angle here, I was able to just like snake it around and get it into this unit without having to cut any of the concrete out. Because I don't really want to cut into this concrete because it's kind of a structural wall and a footing needs to be a certain width underneath a wall. So I don't want to take that out. But this way, it just snakes gently into this unit.
And what I'll say for folks is that this is a real space saver. So if you have both the Saniflo and this, so if you were in a very tiny apartment, this is a nice solution for you.
So it saves about 8 to 10 inches from your toilet sticking out. And we're replacing all the toilets in the house for these units because what you'll have is the vanity comes out, and then usually in the little bit of space that you have to walk, there's just like the toilet sticking out like 8 or 10 inches. So if that toilet were to be recessed towards the wall a little bit better, that would just be a lot better for space. You're not gonna like bump into it. So it solves multiple problems that we have. And yeah, so I started working on this. Now, it is a little hard to figure out like how to set it all up, but this unit basically comes with all these hose clamps and all these like rubber fittings. This rubber fitting is 1.5 inches. Since we went with a 2-inch for the shower, because the shower needs to be 2-inch drain, I used the black coupling there. But it basically comes with these hose clamps like this. Oh, this might actually be another 1.5 inches to 2 inch. So it comes with these hose clamps that you just tighten here. And this, you know, you can see it's still quite flexible here, which is actually quite nice. Like even this fitting has still a lot of movement in here because of that rubber coupling. And I guess it's kind of similar to like a Fernco fitting. So if you have a break in your pipe, you could put this around it and tighten these hose clamps, and that will make it waterproof, and it's code approved as well. So it's kind of similar to this. And what I like about it too is that at any point if I have a problem with this unit, I could undo these hose clamps, take this off because it's quite flexible, and then probably get this unit out of here if I need to do repairs on it or something like that. So it's not as glued in place as some of the rest of the plumbing might be.
Now, what's this?
Yeah, so this is the drain line this is you can drain it by 3/4 or an inch, and they recommend you to put a ball valve on this so that you can close off the flow if you ever need to. So I put that right here so that if you're in the cabinet, you could just shut this off and it will stop the flow. The other thing that this has is I purchased this little alarm. So you basically have to drill a hole here, which is another kind of unintuitive part of this, is that some of the things you have to actually destroy, like this fitting comes with, like you could see that it's cut. I had to cut it at the point where it was 1 inch. So if I left a little bit more on, it would have been reduced to 3/4. So depending on what pipe size you're gonna use, you have to cut off the rest. Same for the vent here. I actually had to cut the plastic of the cover in order to like open this up, which they all outline in the manual. So, but it's not like, it's a little unintuitive.
I would say you feel like you're doing something wrong. But
Yeah.
you feel like you're going to ruin it or something.
Yeah, if you've never installed something like this, you're like, what? I'm supposed to drill a hole? Like, look, you got to drill a hole and then use silicone. So this will sit in here. If the water level ever gets higher than it's supposed to be, it will sound an alarm. So I guess that's kind of helpful to have. You can also hook up a alarm system to this, a separate alarm system, and because this runs on batteries, so they might die at some point. But if you run this on an alarm system, it will always have, it's basically just 2 contacts that if water rises up, it just creates, it connects the 2 contacts via the water, and the alarm will sound. It looks like a lot of plumbing here, but there's actually, so let me talk about what's going on here.
Sure.
This is a sink. It goes down here and it merges with the shower drain. This is a clean out so we can get into the shower drain ever, all from this cabinet. So if there's ever a clog in the shower drain, we can get to it via here. Then this is the toilet drain. I use this many 45-degree elbows instead of 90s because, again, 90s restrict the water flow, so it's better to use 45s. I also put a clean out on there that's accessible from the other side so that if there's ever something clogged here or stuck, I can always get to that really easily both ways. I actually installed this, and when I glued it, it was sagging a little bit here and it went up into the unit. So essentially, like, I'll try to show you with this fitting.
Just by the way you screwed it on.
Yeah, it's just like so. Now, if you're filming this, like this part here stays the same, but you could see if I rotate it just slightly, you can see that now it's got to go up. Mm-hmm. It's got a little bit of a sag. So first, when I installed it, I had everything glued, and I was really focusing on the part up there, and I wasn't focusing on this because it was on the other side of the wall. And I realized that it was going up into the unit like this slightly. I mean, it would probably worked, but I didn't feel good about it. So what I did is I had 4 inches of straight pipe here, and I just cut that in the middle, and I got a coupling, and I just rotated this to go like this, and now it actually flows downhill.
Because once it's glued, it glues really fast, right?
Yeah, it welds it. It's actually not glue, it actually melts the PVC together and it becomes one unit. So the rubber ring here is also flexible, which is kind of nice because it gives you a lot of flexibility, I guess, to be able to come in at this from slightly different angles. But you could see here on the top, it's a little bit more compressed than it is on the bottom, meaning that it comes in at an angle. So that's real good. This is 4-inch, and then we're reducing it to 3-inch. So that's another benefit here, actually, that we're going from a smaller pipe diameter to a bigger one. It just is going to help the flow a lot. Then off of this is another sink that's going to be on the other side of the wall for the utility room. Just to have a sink there. Who knows? You might ever need it. These are all clean out ports so that we can ever get to stuff. You can always get into the lines if you ever wanted to clean something out. And then this is a vent. And I first installed this kind of in a funky way. I've only installed vents like horizontal because they were always above the flood level of a sink. But then I discovered that I probably did this wrong because there's this rule where you can only run vents vertical or at a 45-degree angle if you're below the level of the sink. So I guess the idea behind that is that if your system ever clogs here at the bottom and the pipes start to fill up with water, you know, if these are horizontal, they could potentially clog. I mean, what are the chances? Probably very little, but they could potentially clog. And then when you get rid of that clog down there, you know, when the water escapes, it could probably get something stuck in there. I don't know if that's like really ever gonna happen, but I just ended up redoing it and put these at a 45-degree angle. Another thing I did is I connected these two vents too early. So I changed that and made two vents go up and made them connect up here so that it's just better, I guess. So that if something gets clogged down here, the whole plumbing system starts to fill with water, the first opportunity for the water to get out will be at the sink instead of like, you know, anywhere else in the plumbing system that you don't have access to. So then there's another vent here for that sink, and I made that one a separate outlet. I put a cap on this one, so if we ever wanted to run a vent somewhere else, who knows, in the future we could do that. This is the vent for the shower going down here, going from 1.5 to 2 inch. And this was a lot of figuring out because there's not a lot of space here. Like, this is basically at floor height here at the end. So all of this will be below the floor and underneath the shower pan, but it still has a good amount of slope on it. And because if this Y was too horizontal, then water from the shower could potentially get into this pipe, which I don't want. So I wanted to make sure I had some slope on this, just to make sure the water keeps going that way. The reason why this is also 2 inch and not 1.5 inch is because it's acting as a wet vent, meaning that there is another sink, actually 2 potential sinks that come in and drain into this line for their water to go to that unit as well. Because somewhere else in the building we have another sink, and that one has to go all the way around the wall, and it comes in through here, and then it drops down in here and actually, you know, drains through the shower drain out in there. So it's a bit of a weird, complicated setup here, but I have no doubt it's gonna work, especially for a sink, because a sink doesn't produce much water. It's not like a shower that has a lot of water coming in it. So this is a future sink option. We have a window right there. Now there's not gonna be a kitchen down here, but if there's ever in the future a renovation that's gonna happen where someone wants to put a sink in front of that window, kind of like how a kitchen sink works, I already have the plumbing installed, so you don't have to rip out. The only thing you'll have to do is you'll have to cut a hole in the wall, and you'll find a pipe that's basically capped off that could become your drain line. So it's just gonna be a really good opportunity to put that in now versus having to potentially destroy all the drywall later if you wanted to ever renovate it. So yeah, that's pretty much our setup here. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna fill the rest of this with foam, 2 inches, and then we're gonna get some bricks and then lay this panel on top of that. And that panel we're gonna attach this red tubing to, and we're gonna like basically run that along the grid just to make just to cover this whole area. And then we're gonna pour that with concrete, this whole area, to make it level with the rest of the floor. And then the PEX lines, they're gonna go into the outlets that used to be for the heaters that were on the wall here. So there were these like baseboard heaters with water, hot water, and we took those out, and now we're gonna hook up a radiant loop to those outlets that are already on our heater. So it's just a really easy way to connect it versus having to install something completely new. We're just gonna be able to use old. And another thing I should say is that we have a double wall here. So the reason why some of this plumbing is like just attached to the outside of this wall is because there's gonna be another one in front of it for soundproofing. There's a lot of noise coming out of that utility room from like boilers, pumps, and all that stuff, and you don't wanna hear that. So a double wall with 1 inch of space in between is hopefully gonna take care of that. And this whole room will have a double wall too. As you can see here, there's 2 walls and they can be independently filled with insulation. And there'll be an air gap in between to make sure that no sound can reverberate between the rooms. So.
The one thing I will say is that we're in central upstate New York, so the rules for plumbing may be different in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, this is definitely not plumbing advice, or make sure you check with your own plumbing person if what you're doing is good. That's what we're gonna do. I haven't shown this to our plumber yet, and he might say, hey, that's wrong, cut it out. But that's fine, we could do that. But it's a great opportunity for me to learn how to do this. And a lot of rules make sense. Another thing I always try to do is keep access to it somehow. And I think this is a way to do it. It looks a little chaotic right here, but
beautiful chaos.
I can get to every line here, so hopefully that's where. And now we're gonna install the water lines. Otherwise there's no water to go through these pipes at all. And I gotta still red guard all of this and build a frame around it. And then I'll glue this last piece on. And then I kind of have to make sure that I know where my shower goes.
Thank you, Sander, for the tutorial.